All right. Our guest today is the writer of some of your favorite country songs ever. You may even hear people like Luke Combs or Eric Church singing these smash hits on your local radio. Our guest has played for a full stadium and stepped onto the Grand Ole Opry stage. He's got plaques, BMI awards, CMA award nominations, and more than likely, they're all hanging next to a 10-point buck in his house. We met through our booking agent, Austin Mullins, at Austin's surprise wedding. More on that later. And we just had one of the best conversations that I've had with a fellow artist about our stories and just kind of where we come from in a long time. I knew after we hung out, I'd love to have this guy on the podcast. Probably still recovering from his hangover after the Dogs national championship win. It's Ray Fulcher.
What's up?
What up, dude?
Not much. You're right. I still
recovering.
I've watched the replay of that championship game. I think 5 times now.
5.
So I get to relive it. But see, there's this thing where it's the regular broadcast, and then you can watch it with the home, like the UGA radio announcers.
Oh, that's cool. I would do that too.
You can watch it with Jimbo Fisher's kind of like breaking it down while you're watching.
Commentary.
I've run the whole gauntlet of ways that you can watch the game.
You've been a huge Dogs fan for life, right? I mean, that's kind of like
I mean, so since I was a little kid, I was a fan, and then I went to school there. And while I was there, which some people don't know, is I was a student assistant with the football team and actually worked with the quarterbacks.
That's right.
And so I kind of like, now that I'm removed from that, I'm still just mostly a fan, but I'm also, I was like, from the end, I was on the inside for a while. So I still feel part of, so.
What quarterbacks were there when you were there?
Stafford was there.
Just casually got, and he's playing in a game this Sunday, right? Just happens to be the Super Bowl.
A little pickup game this Sunday.
Do you and Matty's staff ever just text? Do you ever just?
So Matt, we kept up for a while, and then like he kind of changed his number, but he doesn't have social media, but his wife does.
Right.
So I keep up with him kind of through his wife. Like we've exchanged a bunch of messages, like, hey, tell Matt this, and she'll go.
That's awesome, man.
She'll go, I'll tell him, and then he says he's so proud and like watching you and stuff. So,
dude, it's cool to hear stories like that where like somebody like yourself and Matt Stafford were in college together, and now what you've both been through, you actually have kind of cool, similar stories of like being somewhere, taking some time, and then having these boom explosion moments. Like, I actually love that. That's really cool. I totally forgot about that. You told me that you worked with quarterbacks at Georgia, but now it's all coming back to me. I'm like, shit, that's actually sick.
I'm just happy for him that he gets a shot at that.
Dude,
he was in Detroit for so long, and kudos to him, hats off to him for kind of sticking it out there when he could, and did his best there, and just finally was probably just like, hey, I want to go give myself a shot to win.
100%, and now he is. How did you get into music? Were you doing music in college? Was it a post-college thing?
I wasn't. It was in college, but I didn't pick up a guitar till college. I mean, I always loved music. All kinds of different music, but country was my favorite growing up. But it really didn't become a thing where I kind of thought about picking up a guitar because I was so into music. But the thing that kind of that catalyst moment for me was I saw early Eric Church at Georgia Theater there in Athens. And I remember just something about the way his show made me feel and the songs made me feel. I just was like, man, I'm like feeling this too much to not at least explore this. And, when I picked up a guitar, it was just going to be a hobby. But then next thing you know, it's like, well, maybe I can learn to play some songs. And it's like, oh, maybe I'll play some covers at the corner bar, at the Mexican joint downtown.
Yeah.
And then it goes to, well, maybe I can write a song. And next thing you know, you're like, I kind of want to do this, and so it's that process,
Do we have scary similar stories? And that's why I connected with you so much. Like, I felt like every part of your story that you were telling me.
Yeah, I remember
it was like, no way, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I feel like we're the same way where it was a hobby, and then you found writing songs. And that's kind of where it's like, oh, I'm addicted to this like a drug.
Right.
Like, tell me about those first songs that you wrote and that process of like falling in love with music.
The first song I ever remember writing was so I went to school, I actually have a master's in education. So I was going to be a teacher, football coach. Like that's what I was going to do. And I think my first realization that, hey man, maybe I should actually try to look into this music thing is doing it, for more than just a hobby. As I was student my first week of student teaching, you know, which is, I was excited about doing that, but kind of, I remember I was sitting in the back observing that first week. And when I should have been taking notes, I was like writing this song that kept in my head. And I was writing this, it was the first song I ever wrote. And I just remember going like, you know, maybe I should, I'm wanting to do this while I'm sitting here training to do what I went to school for.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a sign. And so, yeah, it was that one. And then, you know, I wrote a few more, and then a band that me and a buddy started back home called County Line. We just started playing those, you know, mostly covers, but inserting these songs that I had been writing into, you know, our kind of acoustic sets around town. And that was kind of the first, you know, but back then you write a song and you just go, it feels like it's so taxing to write one song, and you think it's good and all, and then you realize it's not. And then you realize that people are just, you know, it's like anything, you have to get in shape, right? And you don't know.
Yeah.
You have to get your brain in shape to write. And that's something that you don't know until you move to Nashville. But I just remember, you know, thinking those songs were good, and then quickly realizing when I moved here that they were no good at all.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through that really steep learning curve of like, kind of, you know, you got a little attitude. You're like, I'm going to be a hit songwriter. And then you go to a writer's round and hear, you know, people with number ones or whatever. And you're like, oh, okay, I need to throw away everything I've ever worked on. Start from scratch. This is garbage. So what year did you move to town?
May of 2014.
And how long from 2014 was it until that kind of first moment where, and I'm curious to hear what you think the moment is of like, oh, I'm doing this for real. And like, I'm not just a kid playing in the college bars.
Yeah. You know, I still, you know, it's crazy. Sometimes I still feel that way. But, you know, for me, it was, and my story, you know, I feel like fate and like trying to put yourself in good positions and all, like that's a real thing, because I met, obviously this is the moment I'm talking about is not this one, but it leads to it. Before anybody knew who he was, before I knew who he was, I met Luke Combs 3 days after I moved to town, and he hadn't even moved to town yet. He hadn't even moved. He just happened to be staying on the one guy's couch, the one guy that I knew in town, his couch. John Langston. He happened to be staying on his couch for the weekend. Right. And so we met, and then when he moved to town that September, we started writing, and I just remember going, I've never heard anything like this guy. Like, this is incredible. And if I'm wrong on that, like, I don't know anything, because, you know, so anyway, we started writing a bunch. But I think that the moment, you know, and this is before we had anything going on, but I always had a feeling like, man, this dude, and we just wrote these songs that made me feel something, and it made me feel like that I was aligned with like my truth as far as what I wanted to be saying and doing.
Right.
And so that I was at peace with that, but I also did have this feeling in the back of my mind that like, man, this dude is going to make these songs something one day. And I think the moment that I realized that realization that you're talking about is I was back home, visiting home, and I was in the McDonald's parking lot, and I went to get out of the truck, and I heard like something familiar on the radio, and I turned it up, and it was the first time I heard When It Rains, It Pours on the radio. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this really happening?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And for me, it was that moment where I go, okay, man, I guess we're doing it, Harry. You know, we're really doing it, Harry.
We're really doing it.
Yeah. So
that's wild. So how long, so 2014 is when you moved to town. How long until the parking lot moment?
It was, so I moved in May of 2014, and it was June of 2017 when that song went radio.
What is I mean, obviously you're an incredible artist as well, and you're probably moving to town, you're taking meetings. I'm sure you're getting a ton of no's on the publishing side and the artist side. Like, what are those 3 years like as the new guy in town? Because I don't think a lot of people understand. It's really cool to have the parking lot moment, and it's fun to tell the story how you moved to town. But I think the in-between just gets skipped over a lot of times, and I'd love to hear like your kind of take on that.
Yeah. I mean, it was, number one, the scariest thing I've ever done was move, because I didn't know anybody. You know, it was that in between was very trying. And I mean, it's exhausting in a lot of ways because you've never like the number, or so when you come to town, you already know, all right, the chances are way against me.
Yeah.
The odds. And then you get here and you see the people that are so talented and everything going on, and everything feels like it's moving at warp speed. And you're like, how in the world can I ever, like, can I compete? And so it's a lot of like questioning to yourself. But I think the first couple of years was so kind of frustrating because even when I would write a song that I was like, okay, if this isn't it, then I don't know what is. And it was still a no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then even, when I would record something or go play for somebody and feel super good about the meeting on the artist side, it was still a no. And so you go, oh man, what, like, is it just like, am I not good enough, or do I need to keep scratching and clawing and figuring it out? Because you get, but then there's a thing in your head where you're like, well, you get 99 no's before the first yes. Well, there's I've got 5 of them, so I've got 94 to go.
But that is a mindset that not a lot of people have, though, and I think that's special. And I felt that the first time that we talked, and I do feel like your story of sticking it out and hearing a bunch of no's is really, really cool. And that mindset is special, dude. Like that, that's not a lot of people have that.
For me, and I'll always say, like, when people go like, what was the moment it kind of shifted for you? And I remember, vividly remember a moment where Luke and I were both frustrated because we were both getting no's on the publishing side, the record side. And I remember we just were like, what do we do? Because we feel like these are really good and we don't know kind of what way to turn or how to get better. And then finally, I remember we had a conversation where we go, hey, we don't really understand what we're doing wrong or what the blueprint is, or kind of like how to play the publishing game or whatever. So like, what if we just really lean into what the type of songs and the type of music that we're going to be proud of, if nothing else ever came from it? Just lean into the stuff that like we do best, see where the chips fall. And so that moment where we kind of let go of trying to figure it out and just kind of lean into the music is when 6 months later he was exploding onto the scene. Yeah. And then all those songs that we wrote in that kind of time period where we go, hey, let's just do our thing, wound up being on that first, record. So that was a huge lesson that I learned from that kind of time period.
Yeah, it's cool when I feel like the Luke Combs explosion and the similar explosion that you're having right now is born of authenticity. It is saying, like, I understand that some people do this, or the Nashville program or political system or game wants me to be this thing, but I do this thing. And I do it really well, and I love it because it makes me feel that Eric Church moment that I had at that college show. And so I'm going to die on that sword. And it's really scary, but I actually think it's way
it feels
cooler.
Like jumping off a bridge.
Yeah, 100%. Because what you're saying is, hey, I think I know better than you, Nashville person in an office, who says, what if you guys gave me another song about a girl and had Truck in there at this point, and you're like, or we're going to write this song called When It Rains, It Pours, and the chorus changes every time. Like, I'm sure, exactly. I'm sure everyone in town was like, hey, look at me. That will never be a hit. And you're like, I think it is. And then you did it, and he did it, and you did it. That's sick, dude.
Yeah, it was just kind of one of those where it was, and I'm sure you feel the same way in your own story, where you go, at least for me, I was like, well, I don't want to be like okay at doing this thing and okay at doing this thing, and let's just lean into, number one, find our strengths and our weaknesses, and of course work on the weaknesses, of course, but really dive into those strengths and like dive into why are we here and what kind of mark do we want to leave, and like if it doesn't align with that, then maybe that's not something we should be focusing on right now, and again,
dude,
so it is definitely taking a chance and so scary, but we had got enough no's trying to just like be the everything person that we were just like, well, what do we got to lose, So and
that's what's cool to me is like Because I think that there's a lot of people who could be listening right now, and they're in the season of no's. And what you guys have to offer is like the no's are actually freedom. To be told no over and over again, eventually you go, well, fuck it. I don't have anything to lose, so I'd rather die on my sword doing what I love than die on some random sword of somebody telling me how to be or how to act or how to dress or how to sing or how to... I love that. I think that is an underrated message, especially in today's day and age, man.
Yeah, because it's hard, I mean, especially with, with social media and just kind of seeing what everyone else is doing. Sometimes it's hard to kind of find your own true north.
100%. 100%. We all struggle with it, and I'm just a big fan, man. I think I'm going to start asking you some big old questions here. There's no wrong answers. They're random and just, whatever comes to the dome. Here we go.
Cool.
If there was a pill that every human being could take that makes them instantly feel or know something, what would you put in that pill?
Oh.
Ooh.
I think peace, true peace.
Yeah.
I really think that. Just like that feeling of just kind of being aligned with who you are, who you want to be, and just, loving everybody and feeling loved. I think that feeling of peace is so underrated and so necessary. So, yeah, if I had something to give to the world, literally just feeling at peace, man. I feel like we'd all be in a real good spot then.
Oh, 100%. What you said about, like, being known and loving other people, too, like, I think we'd be shocked at how many people are doing bad things or hurting other people because they haven't felt that. And I'm so curious to see that, like, if we could give these people these pills, which, there are some legal reasons why we can't.
Right. Well, yeah, because, and this is a deeper conversation here, but it's like a lot of times, hurt people, where it's like,
dude, it's real.
People that normally, it's usually a I feel this way, and so this is my way of lashing out. Whereas, because we're not born with wanting to hurt others. It's like you go through something, and then somehow that comes out, and so and it makes me personally just sad when I see people hurting, and so
right. I had this conversation with my parents the other day, which was just like, I try really hard when I see somebody or something that I don't like to really sit there for a second and think about, okay, but like, who hurt this person?
Yeah.
And what are their experiences? What is their brain chemistry? All these things. And would I be acting different if I was them? Right. And the answer is most likely no. And
most likely no, yeah.
Immediately I'm like, shit, I just try to love on people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder said than done. But let's see. When you're laughing the hardest, who are you usually with?
Oh. Luke's pretty funny, man. He makes me laugh really hard. My roommate, Matt Chase, I'm always laughing at him. And I'm a couple of like, I have a group of buddies back home, and when I kind of get with them is usually when I'm in a super free headspace. And so just kind of in the nature of that relationship is very, it's an unplug for me. And so getting some of that, and it's a couple different groups and a couple different people, but yeah, man, what a good feeling, right?
Oh, there's nothing better. Like those high school or college friends who deeply know you.
Yep.
And they'll text you, dude, congrats on the number one. The next text is just a roast. Yeah. You're like,
total roast. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You need it. You need it to feel normal and safe and sane. And no, dude, I'm the same way. I have a group of friends back home, and I always feel like so unplugged when I'm back home. That's a great word.
Too. They keep you just like
100%. Yeah, it's like these like bumpers that kind of, when you're getting really kind of like frazzled or like starting to take off, you need those people in your life, especially the ones who make you laugh. Like, hey man, it's not that serious. And I saw you puke at a party when you were 21, so I don't care that you have cool stuff going on.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Do you have a mission statement? Do you have a mantra? Do you have anything that like you have tattooed on your body, written on your wall, something that you say or hear every day?
So there's not a I don't have a tattoo, but I had this thing, this kind of self mantra that I always would tell myself when I moved to town, because I moved to town a little bit. I was like in my mid 20s before I even kind of started thinking about moving to town, and I was only 3 years from being 30 when I moved to town. So, you know, when I got to thinking, I was like, man, what are the odds that a guy like me, who don't know how it works, who don't know anybody, and who is older than most, like, that moved to town, what are the odds that I could ever, quote unquote, make it?
Sure.
As an artist, as a whatever. And I would always say this thing to myself, well, if it's never happened, let's just pretend it's never happened. There's got to be a first. And so I always just kept, and I still use that. I go, and when I feel like the odds are against me, or when I go, man, I just feel like this probably isn't likely, I'll go, well, it's happened once, and there's got to be a first. You know, if it's never happened before, then there's got to be a first.
Dude,
so
I love that.
That's one thing that I kind of.
I'm going to steal that from you, dude.
Good, man.
I heard somebody the other day. It was somebody on the Bengals. They were talking about how, like, we don't consider ourselves underdogs. And
Right.
I was like, interesting. And he kept talking. He went on to say, like, the only thing they kept saying this whole season is, why not us? It can be anyone. Someone's got to play a stadium. Somebody's got to win the Super Bowl. Why not us? We put in the work. We like that's a really, and I use this word in a good way, like, dangerous mentality. You can start doing some crazy cool shit when you're like, it's got to happen.
It's empowering, yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Dude, I love that. I was not expecting that. I really love that. What do you think your younger self would say to you right now? He's going to pop in the back door there.
Yeah.
And you could have a conversation. He knows everything that you've done. What do you think he's saying to you?
I think he would probably say, because he knows me and knows that I sometimes undervalue the things that I've done and overvalue the things that I'm, like, going for.
Yeah.
And so I think he would tell me to slow down a little bit more than I do, and to, and I think he would say, hey, man, the stuff you have done already is sort of beyond our wildest dreams. So if it all ended tomorrow, like, you can still be proud of yourself. And I think sometimes I struggle with, like, man, there's just that next level, or there's that next like thing is, you know, I have a record deal now, but then it's like the next wins, you know, the big hit, and then it's the whatever comes after that, you know. And so
can you get three in a row? Can you get a triple play? Can you sell 10,000 tickets? I mean, dude, it never ends, and it's literally the same shit I struggle with, 100%.
And so for me, I think he would come in and say, like, hey, man, you're just playing with house money now, so enjoy it, you know. So
it's cool because both of the things that we just talked back to back about are really good for me to hear, which is like, why not me? And you're kind of playing with house money, which is like, there's no reason to be scared. There's like, you kind of are already winning in a great way because you put in a lot of work. So enjoy it. The goal was not to get somewhere and then stress about getting to another somewhere.
Because then it, like you said, it's perpetual.
Dude,
you know?
it is perpetual. And I think we both had enough cool things happen in our life where you are, at least one of those moments, you aren't as happy as you thought you'd be. And you're like, this is weird.
This is strange.
Yeah. Have you ever had a moment like that where, like, you're sitting there at a number one party, or you're about to go out on stage, and you're like, I'm not feeling how I'm supposed to be feeling?
Well, I think, yes. And the reason is, I think, and I've like analyzed that before and gone like,
that's why I'm asking. Cause I have that thought all the time, and I'm like,
I think it's because when we're imagining it, all we're imagining is the joy that's attached to it. And there is that in that moment as well. But I think what we don't take into account when we're dreaming about it or thinking about it is all the other stuff that's around it, which is still our humanness, right? Like our what's next desire, our anxiety about, oh my gosh, like, I'm here now, what I do, all that stuff that's still around it, we don't take into account when we're just thinking, oh, it's just this monumental thing and, like, life's complete.
Yep.
that's just not the way life works, but that's how our brains work when we think about what it will be like.
I think you nailed it, dude. And I try so hard in those moments to be like, no, this is enough. This is cool.
Right.
It can also be complex where like I can be happy and sad at the same time. I can be loving where I am and be like, but I have a stomach ache or I'm really tired or whatever.
I had to learn that two things can be true at once, and that's the thing that I've had to learn because I drove myself crazy a lot. If I ever felt that way of going like, almost this, which is another deeper conversation, but almost this kind of sense of like guilt or shame about not feeling a certain way. And then I go, oh, I'm just human. And so I think that's what it is,
Yeah, so. Just giving yourself that grace to be like, I can feel all of it.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm allowed to feel all that.
So. 100%. What do you think that your superpower is? What do you think that a part of you that's really undervalued or the thing that you're like, you know what? I might not be blah or blah or blah, but I'm a damn good X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Boom. So I feel like I would like to think that I try to be a tremendously good listener, and a detailed listener. And I don't know if that's undervalued or overvalued, but
I think that's undervalued, especially today.
I try to be, and as far as my, in my artistry and songwriting and stuff, one thing, I don't know this about myself, but Matt sometimes will say to me, he's like, you're really good at he's like, when I hear you explain something or in a lyric, I can like actually see it because you put details in there that allow me to see it. Right. And so there's a lot of people good at that, and I've never stopped to think, but I'm just taking Matt's word for it that hopefully I'm good at that. Cause I really like cherish that about, say like Eric Church's writing, especially that early stuff. I could just kind of like see it.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I strive to to paint a picture with words. And not that every song's should be a Bluebird song,
Sure.
Some songs are more about melody, but, and feel and all that stuff. But
of course.
I would like to think that that's something that I am decent at. So.
Yeah. Well, and really good songwriting is just really good listening. It's really good paying attention to the world around you because everyone has been through a breakup, but as a songwriter, you go, I'm just trying to think of a cool detail, and that grass ain't even grew back where I used to park my car or whatever, whatever that Sam Hunt lyric is. It's like,
that's it's like you see that.
Correct. Yeah. And the visual, instead of saying, and this is why I was so attracted to country music over anything else, is because I'd hear songs like These Boots by Eric Church and go, holy shit, this guy just gave me a movie in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And pop music, to me, the difference between country and pop is often, not always, that pop music seems to be the soundtrack to the movie, and country music is the script.
Is the movie? I love that. Yeah.
It's like More Than Once to Save My Ass from those cops and two, Dude. That's the fucking, I see Eric Church running away from blue and red lights. He used very minimal word economy, yet he told a full scene of a movie. Exactly. Yeah. And all of that is listening. That is listening and paying attention to your surroundings. So I think underrated.
Well, thank you. I would say, and if there's one thing where I think it's a blessing and a curse, is I feel like I'm sometimes hyper aware of when someone walks in a room, how they feel. Mm-hmm. And so it's great because I'm like, I can be knowledgeable about that and go, okay, I'm sensing this. And then there's an opportunity to maybe talk about it or not, just being able to sense it so I can their interaction. But on the other side of it, it's the same thing. I'm so aware of that I'm then thinking about it, going like, so-and-so is, they're off. Something's going on.
Yeah. It's torturing.
Yeah. And so I do feel that and know that about myself, but you got to be careful even then to not kind of take everyone's everyone's weight and put it on
Sure.
yourself, you know. So
Feel everyone else's problems for
Yeah.
sure. All right. What is one of the biggest butterfly effect moments of your life? You know, where like that, if I didn't go to that right, or if so and so didn't cancel, or do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, you know, I think about that when I met Luke, because John was the only guy I knew in town, but I also kind of on a whim just texted John. It was my third day in town. It was my birthday. And,
Oh, wow.
and I was going to kind of sit at home and go, you know, I don't know anybody. So, but I had only met John once, but I just remember texting him going, hey, I know you just moved to town too. It's my birthday. I know you don't know me that well, but do you want to go do something? He was like, dude, I don't know anybody either. Let's go. It was that night when he goes, hey, I got to get back to the apartment. I got to let my buddy in who stayed on the couch. That happened to be.
Freaking way.
Yeah. So that's how that
And
happened.
imagine you don't send that text. And you,
Right.
I mean, you probably would have met Luke anyway, but that night had to happen for that reason. That's awesome.
But that night I got to meet him before we got to know each other that night before he moved to town. And it was just kind of us versus running into him later on at Tin Roof Revival when maybe we didn't strike up that same connection.
Sure.
So that's one example. There's a songwriting example that I always go back to is, which is probably, it's maybe my favorite song that Luke's recorded that we've cut or that he's cut. But, the day we wrote I Got Away With You, I woke up feeling terrible and just wasn't like a COVID thing. It was just like my stomach was hurting. I just felt bad. I've been writing like crazy and was just burnt. And I just remember going like, Lord, just show up. And like, even if it's your B game, like Luke could at least sing something really good.
Yeah.
So, and then it ended up being that day. And I mean, I was so close to canceling.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Those moments in life where I've done the same thing, or I've had somebody cancel and then you kind of like conjoin two rights or something like that, and you'll get one of your favorite songs and you're like, whoa, what would have happened?
Yeah, dude.
Or do you ever think about this? Like, you pitched an idea, let's say to Luke, and you could have pitched that idea like 2 weeks earlier to somebody else, and it's just a voice memo that sits in everyone's phone versus being a number one. Versus being played to a stadium. That's insane.
Crazy. It's all the stuff, man, that you think about. I mean, if you know, an if then or what it, you know, that game can go forever. But yeah, those are a couple that I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, 100%, I'm sure. All right, dude, you've been awesome. I'm gonna ask you just one more question.
Yeah.
And just again, I really hope you know how big of a fan of you I am. You're just one of the people.
Thanks. Since I met you, man, I got to see, man, it was funny. Like after that day, I started kind of noticing, man, it was so much was happening and is happening in your career. So super proud of you. And like some of the stuff that you were saying that day, it was like some of your frustrations. Like I finally got to see like the breakthrough shortly after talking to you about it. So
yeah, dude, thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's cool to like come up with cool people. It just makes me super happy. So we need to write a song and we need to hang out more and all the things.
We do, buddy.
Absolutely. One more question for you, and I'll let you get out of here. Is there a time in your life where you felt like I'm doing exactly what I should be doing? If so, when? Did you have that moment where you're like, whoa, I was born to do this?
Yes. And I'll say, like, for me, in music, which I've always felt like since I started, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but never more than when I got to debut a song at the Grand Ole Opry on my debut, thinking, honestly, not knowing at all how it was going to go over, and then being totally surprised when the place went absolutely bonkers at the end of it, and I was just playing by myself. And I was so taken aback by that moment that I just, one of the many emotions I had in that moment, like, man, I was right. I'm supposed to be doing this. So, yeah.
Did you know that my parents were there the night?
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And I didn't know this either. And so my mom's like, who's coming on the podcast? I'm like, oh, it's Ray. She's like, they went with like my grandparents or somebody was in town and they went to the Opry. They had no idea that we had the connection that we have or whatever through Austin and all these people. And she was like, yeah, we were at the Opry when he made his debut. So tell him that she said it was one of the coolest moments that she's ever watched from an artist because
oh man,
everyone around her was crying. It was like there's this palpable thing of like you were living your dream. So I think that's the perfect way to wrap it up is like that crazy fucking story.
Yeah. Man, that's really cool that they were there, man. It's gosh, man.
They said it was incredible, dude. Well, many more Opries to come for you. I'm excited for you, man.
Excited for you too, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, of course, dude. Talk to you soon.
See you, bud.
See ya. All right, that's another episode of Why Are We Here? Ray Fulcher is just good people. I love talking to people with really cool and relatable stories like that because he really just feels like your neighbor or the guy you went to high school with or whatever. Like he's just kind of like your everyman, and the fact that he's crushing it and has all the Luke Combs #1s and is playing stadiums with Luke and playing the Crandall Opry and getting nominated for CMA Awards. It just makes me really happy. Really good guy. Check out his music and his socials. Remember to follow us, subscribe, and we got a bunch more episodes coming at you ASAP. Rocky style. We love you guys. Talk to you soon. This is Why Are We Here? Then they'll play the little music. Why are we here?